with some candidates for student body president this year.
I'm Chanel Carr. I'm obviously the vice president.
Okay, cool. And what we really want to do is just make a more unified campus for NKU. We're both from the area. We've seen NKU grow as we've grown up in this area. And we just want to see, like, because I feel like it's the same group of people every year from the SGA, the same similar types of people, and we want to really bring in more of the campus, more of the demographic. We feel like we actually represent more of that demographic because we are commuter students. We're from the area, but we're also heavily involved in the university. We want everybody to be able to experience that. So some of the things we want to bring to the university, you know, just a more unified place for people to go on the weekend, people that hang out on campus. Also things like a 24-hour library, improvements in parking, dormitory conditions, and things of that nature.
Basically, I'm just going to mimic what Chuck said. We're heavily involved on campus. I'd like to point out that I'm not affiliated with Greek Life, so I think that also is a great component in relating to the student body, because majority of students are not involved because they're not Greek, and I think they should get involved. And I would just like to say that you can get involved if you're not Greek. That's really cool. But obviously I'm friends with the Greeks as well. Anyways, so yeah, I don't know. We're commuter students, so we understand how the majority of the students operate. This is a commuter campus. So we're just here to unify the student body.
That's all.
All right. Eric, go ahead.
First, to start, I would like to thank the Northerner for having this debate. I think it's great that we have an opportunity as students to come in and become more educated on issues that are becoming bigger issues for the rest of us as students. And it's great that the Northerner is here to help keep everybody updated on things that are going on within the student body. When I was first elected last year as the vice president, one of the biggest issues that I ran into last year was indeed inexperience. The big thing was when issues came on the table, I had no idea where to begin to go with them. But in my experiences as vice president, that's different now. We've had the ability to network with the administration, with the right people, know where to go on issues, and we can take you in that right direction. Because next year we have a plan. And this plan is to take NKU in the right direction. The 3 points of the plan are student experience, campus improvements, and advocacy for NKU. All of these subtopics are part of the North 2020 project to bring NKU where it wants to be in the year 2020. It's a project that Dustin and I conceived last semester later, a project that we wanted to bring forward to all the students to help get some input on things that they wanted to see happen by the year 2020. Each pillar of this plan is focused on the development of an environment that promotes a campus to help create a happy, healthy NKU student. With this plan, we'll take NKU in the right direction.
Once again, I'd like to thank the Northerner for having us all here today. And as Eric said, I think it makes for a great forum for students to be able to get informed about the different candidates and what they stand for. Eric also hit it on the inexperience from last year. That will not be an issue this year. Eric and I have both served on SGA since we came to NKU. We both are serving on the E-Board right now, and we've seen this SGA take leaps and bounds over what our previous SGAs have, and we want to continue that path. Another thing is, we have relationships with the administrators, the staff, the students that a lot of people don't. Eric sits on the Faculty Senate and the Staff Congress and is a voice at that table. I've also gotten to get to know a bunch of administrators through redoing the all-card this year, going above and beyond what SGA was really, what our offices entailed, but going above and beyond that and putting a new all-card out there for everyone next year. And I think Eric and I are both really excited about this debate. We're excited to see what students see as a concern, and we look forward to the rest of the debate.
Okay. John, go ahead.
My name is John Young. I forgot to take a running mate. Sorry about that. Basically, this is an exercise in curiosity for me. I'm very curious as to how student government operates at a university level. I'm very interested in what kind of growth that they're looking to get. Also, to get other people involved. That was one thing that I was interested in. Since I'm not part of the Student Government Association, I felt like I'm kind of distant. I have no relationship whatsoever to it. So I thought I would just run and see what could happen. So that's basically what I'm doing.
All right. Now we're going to move on to some questions. Chuck and Chanel, we're going to start with you guys. You have about 4 to get through. So to start out, what is your largest motivation for running for the 2012 SGA president?
I would say, first and foremost, it's the fact that we know we can make a difference. I honestly, deciding to run for president here was kind of always in the back of my head. I've been approached by several people, but I didn't really know it was something I wanted to do until I went to the Board of Student Body Presidents meeting with Dustin when he had me organizing the Rally for Higher Education. And I met all those people there, and I really saw that you really have the opportunity and really the tools to actually do something and make a difference within this, not only within NKU's community, but within the state as a whole. And seeing that, it really spoke to me and showed me that if you work hard enough, you really can do great things. And then from that point, he was choosing to run me, and I decided I didn't want to run with anybody but Chanel. So that's what it came down to after that.
Basically, Chuck, like you said, he came to me and had the idea of, hey, you should run for vice president with me. At first, I was like, no, I don't know, I'm pretty good at this whole Secretary of Public Relations thing. I serve on the e-board for SGA right now. I came into the Senate this time last year. I went through the election process and I got appointed in the fall. So I served as senator for a semester, then I became Secretary of Public Relations, and from there I was like, you know what, I think I'm ready to take on another leadership position, because I'm involved in a lot of other organizations such as Activity Programming Board, Common Ground, I'm in Leadership Mentors, Presidential Ambassadors, you name it, I love it. I love NKU. So to do this with Chuck, I think it was amazing, and I just really want to help the NKU student body.
All right, as part of your platform, you mentioned 24-hour library hours. And I know that SGA has been pushing for those for a while now. What will you do differently to implement this if you are elected?
Well, actually, the implementation isn't actually our job as SGA. What our job is to voice the concerns of the student body to the university and administration. And so one of the things we've met with lots of students, like I met with tons of history students, they're like, yes, I want a 24-hour library. Tons of students want it. And honestly, with this going D1, the size we're at, there's no reason we shouldn't have one. So if we get, it's the same thing with us advocating with the Rally for Higher Education. If we have enough people and a loud enough voice and persistent enough, we can make it happen.
Okay. Also, as part of your platform, you described making SGA more accessible to the average student. How would you define the average student, and how do you plan on doing that?
Well, statistically, the average student is defined as a commuter student that basically comes here and goes to work after class. And we always feel like, it's always the more involved people that come to SGA, they come with their concerns. And actually, when the people that actually live on campus only make up about 20% of the student population, I think it's important to also remember the people that might not always have a chance to be here, or they might not always have a chance to come to an SGA meeting. And I want to make them feel like, it's okay, they can come to us at any time. There has to be some sort of way for those people to have representation on this campus, but I don't think it's happening right now.
I know that personally it was important for me because when I came into Senate, before that, last year when I was a freshman, I had no idea what SGA was. I was so scared to go in that office. I thought those kids were the popular people. I was like, I don't belong in here. And then after being in SGA, I realized, okay, this is what it's like, and this is how I don't want people to feel like. I don't want people to feel like they're an outsider. SGA is here to serve the student body, and I think that's really important to talk about it.
All right, and finally, this semester, the Northerner reported on the History and Geography department's attempt to consolidate 2 minors into 1 major, and which would eliminate the minors, with minimal student input. How do you feel about the university making changes without making it well known to all students?
I don't feel good about it, if that's what you're asking. I feel like it's important not only for the university, but for all of us. It's important for students to be more involved in aspects like that, to where they can actually have that information accessible to them and actually want to go do that. So it's partly on students, but I think mostly it's on the university. I think it's extremely irresponsible to make a decision that affects such a wide range of students without getting student input first.
Okay. How do you think you can make a difference with that if you're elected?
I mean, if we're elected, obviously we'll be working closely with the university administration, and I think from that point, it's all about making our concerns known, making it known that it's not okay to make such changes without consulting the student body first.
All right. John or Eric, do you guys want to take some time to discuss with them about what they have to say?
I'd actually like to pass it off to Alan. He wanted to ask a couple of questions.
I don't want to make this sound as if it's a personal attack. This is simply, we want to make sure we take care of some of the things that are on the table that we feel are being taken credit, like people are taking credit for that was not there. Starting off with the Rally for Higher Education, the making it the thing that it was this year was discussed this summer at Kentucky Leadership Academy, which was only the e-board at that time, which did not include any of the candidates that are running except for Eric and I at that point. That idea, while Chuck and Chanel did have a part in running it, the idea and the ideas that we wanted to make it a bigger event was put forward at the beginning of the year. Also, I wanted to address the fact the Greek affiliation title. Eric and I, we have talked about this numerous times. Yes, we are both part of a Greek organization, and that only accounts for about 10% of our university, and that other 90% deserves an equal voice. We will make sure that every student has a voice, and Eric and Dustin said this last year, and we want to reiterate it again. If we are elected, the only letters that we will wear are NKU.
Okay. John?
I was just curious about the whole 24-hour library access. I understand that that's an important issue to certain people, but have you thought about what implication that would actually have on the library, the staff, the budget, and things?
Yeah, actually, we looked into it, and it's perfectly feasible to have one for the library open. And the reason it's so important is because, especially a lot of the non-traditional students I talk to, or graduate students, people that have jobs, they don't always have access to the library during regular hours. I think it's important to focus on their education as much as it is like mine and yours, when we can be there regular hours during the day.
Second? All right, Eric and Alan, we're gonna move on to you guys. Sorry, and Claire's gonna take over from me.
Just as we asked Chuck and Mel, we were wanting to know, what is your largest motivation for running for 2012 student president?
The biggest thing that I want to bring to the table here is that I did not decide to run with Alan, and Alan did not decide to run with me. We chose to run together because we know that we are the most cohesive unit, and our goals align so well that we know that we can take NKU in the right direction. We have a plan. We know that everything in this plan is feasible, and we intend, if elected, to take NKU in that direction of this plan.
I'd say a motivating factor, first and foremost, is the student body. We wouldn't be in this position if we didn't believe in the student body of NKU. I think that's what every one of us up here shares, is that we have a devotion to NKU, and ultimately that is the motivation for running.
Okay. This semester, the Northerner reported on a student who was denied an interpreter for classes by NKU's Disability Services. How do you feel about Disability Services? How do you feel about how they handle the students' cases on an individual basis?
I would like to start by saying that I actually did read that article. To tell you everybody the truth, I'm not 100% sure of what the existing policy is for disability services with that particular student's case, and I do sympathize for it. This is one of those things, though, that because we don't know the policy, we can bring it to their attention and address it and say, hey, this may need a policy change. This is one of those things where, you can sit down, have that discussion and say, what can we do to make this easier on this particular student? And if elected, we would do our best to meet with the right people to address this issue.
The campus recreation center is currently being threatened by the state with a cut in funding, which would currently stop the construction that would begin. So how do you plan on working to make this happen?
As we said, one of the biggest points of our platform here is the advocacy for NKU. This goes to the Health Innovation Center, this goes to the Campus Rec Center, this goes to everything. If elected, we want to make NKU a voice in Frankfurt and a voice in DC, because it's not about Kentucky anymore. It is about Frankfurt and our legislators, but NKU is being recognized on a national level. It's about taking those issues to our legislators and saying, hey, what can we do to make this happen? And that's exactly what we intend to do.
An SGA recently passed a resolution requesting the university implement temporary parking passes for students. How do you plan on making parking more affordable and accessible for all students?
All right, when it comes to parking, I think there's been a misnomer through this election cycle about how parking works. If we are elected, there is no way that we can change the parking fees for next year. They've already been voted on by the Board of Regents. They are set for next year. With that being said, Eric and I will do everything we can to meet with the new parking director and make sure that we strike a balance with them between what students want in services and the price that students can afford.
You guys want to, Chuck or John, do you want to take a second to?
I have a question. When you're talking about being a bigger advocate in Frankfurt and in Washington, D.C., how specifically would you be doing that?
One of the biggest things that I did actually recently, when everybody was on spring break, I spent my spring break in Frankfurt. I went down there with Chuck actually for the Governor's Prayer Breakfast, and then independently throughout the week with other representatives from SGA to meet with our legislators and talk to them about issues that are affecting us. it's very important for us as students to come together and to be a unified voice to help make a difference for the things that are directly affecting us, like bonds.
I'd also like to throw in this week, NKU with the chamber, the Northern Kentucky Chamber, we have one student who we have a good working relationship with, who is the only NKU student who will be going to DC for the week in DC this week. So I think it's a great way to extend, we're extending ourselves to the national level.
You guys talked a lot about advocacy in Frankfurt, but would you agree with me that you don't need to have the title of SGA president or be an SGA to do that?
I would agree that you don't need the title, but I think it looks good for students if the SGA president takes the initiative because he is elected into that role. You know, the students elected him for a reason, and that's him or her for a reason, and that's to take them in the direction that is right.
Well, because honestly, I was there with you that week going to Frankfurt, and I can safely say that this is something I'm going to continue to do whether we win this election or not. Do you feel it?
I mean, I'm just going to throw my tidbit in here. Yes, I think every student, and I agree with you that if win or lose, I will be in Frankfurt doing the same thing. But the students elect one person to be their student body president to speak as the entire voice of NKU. We've gotten people to call their legislators and stuff, and that's great. That is exactly what we need. But we also have to have that person that walks in there and says, I am speaking on behalf of every student at NKU when I say this. And I think that's very important.
All right, John, we're going to finish up with you, starting with the same question that we asked the other two candidates. What is your largest motivation for running for 2012 SGA president?
I think it was in my first year, I was sitting in the cafeteria having lunch, and first of all, I didn't even know that it was an election was going on. And this candidate goes around beside me and is literally like passing out pieces of paper on that day, asking people if they had voted. The majority of people that he talked to, including myself, had not voted, didn't even know about the election, didn't know what time it was going to happen or even how to vote. And that really got me to thinking. It's kind of a disconnect to have a student government association at a university level. I can understand kind of, a high school student government association is maybe just perfunctory. But to have a student government association at this level that is not really connected to its student body, so much so that the majority of them don't even vote. I think it's, at least the statistic I've been heard is somewhere between 1, maybe 2% is a good turnout for the entire campus to vote. And I think that if this kind of disconnect's happening at this point, that the people who aren't voting now are going to continue not to be involved in their community, they're going to continue not to be involved in who governs them and who makes what decisions for them. So that incident right there alone actually drove me into running this campaign. The other thing, when I signed up to go to school, I had no idea what to expect. I had been around other campuses. I have to say that I'm very impressed with the student body that I've been exposed to so far at NKU. Very intelligent, very driven, really good people to be around and talk to. So between those two things, I thought, I'll just run, maybe shake some things up, see what can happen.
All right, you told the Northerner earlier, or last week, I think in last week's issue, that you were doing this as a performance.
Yes.
How will your performance affect NKU and its students?
What do you think that I mean by that, by the performance? I was doing this as I do a lot of things. Basically, I just go out there, I put myself out and see what happens, see what kind of feedback there is, see what kind of response I get. And that's just pretty much how I approach anything new or different in my life.
All right. If you're elected, how do you plan on taking that into what you'll do for the students?
Well, honestly, I think the biggest thing pressing down on the student body right now is the cuts, the budget cuts. I think it's overwhelming how much money is going to be taken away, and it's just, I think it's really bad at a point where the university has just stepped into Division I, which I think is great. The university has also reached out into the local community to become kind of a motivator in the Northern Kentucky area. And all of a sudden, there's going to be this across-the-board budget cut that's going to affect almost every aspect of student life. So while I understand being an advocate in Frankfurt and in Washington DC, I think it needs to start locally. I think that the students need to be made very, very aware of what kind of effect the budget's going to have on them all. And I think not just having one person there, but having the voice of the majority of the students saying, this is affecting us, it's affecting our future, it's affecting what's going to happen.
All right. In your focus statement, you promised to implement recess to the college level, and how do you plan on implementing this and why?
Honestly, I did give that a thought. I always do two things. I usually have two different meetings for things. The one, I mean, if I would like to see a basic lightening up in a way among the student body. I think that it's great that it's a serious campus. It's great that there's a lot of dedicated people here. But it's also a time when I think you should just lighten up just a little. So whether that's doing special occasion, fundraising days, other things, kind of not your normal bake sale, kind of come and, buy our bake sale, do that. I think that there needs to be an aspect of fun injected into the community life. And then I thought, why not just designate 3 p.m. on Friday to meet at a certain area and have recess?
All right. And then finally, earlier this year, the Northerner reported on the multiple pedestrians who were hit while crossing the streets on campus. How do you feel about the NKU's current pedestrian safety policies?
Those things make a big noise when you get near that crosswalk, I've noticed. So, that's one thing. I think that pedestrian safety is definitely an issue. I used to live in downtown Cincinnati, and I feel safer as a pedestrian here on campus than I would even feel as being on a sidewalk in downtown Cincinnati. As far as, just bad driving, I've noticed that there's quite a few really good drivers here. Honestly, I think that the roundabout helps because it's been proven through different studies that having a roundabout causes drivers to be even more cautious and to pay more attention to what they're doing. So I think that the signs that they have, also having the grooves cut into the road that make noise, I think that all helps. But I still think it should be emphasized for anybody about to cross the street that you need to look both ways. I live in Newport and I have to look both ways on York Street because people go the wrong way. It's just going to happen. So,
all right. Chuck and Eric, do you want to take a second to respond?
Mind if we go first? Cool. John, you had a lot of good points, a lot of things I heard I liked. One of the things you mentioned was you did not know the time or place that even when elections were going on. So what would you say would be a good way to rectify that?
Well, I understand for the university's sake why they might want the election done in a week, but I think that the period might want to be lengthened out some. I think that the Northerners done a pretty good job covering the elections, but I think that there needs to be more banners, there needs to be more displays, and definitely an explanation of this is what time you're going to vote, when you're going to vote, and how. It's like that information just seems to come out like a week before the election.
Okay, so I want to address the low voter turnout, because this isn't just an NKU issue. This is a U of L, a UK. We actually visited University of Southern Indiana to work together on specific issues that are affecting students as they are a sister institution. And they too receive low voter turnout. So it's not just something that is happening here. I want to emphasize the fact that if elected, we will be very accessible and come to the students about things that are deliberately and going to affect them if they come into place. And that's one of the biggest things because students oftentimes, like you said, don't know policies that are coming into effect, and it's very important that they know in real life what's happening with them.
I also wanted to just piggyback off that. I wanted to acknowledge, kind of like Chuck did, the fact that some of your ideas I think are very good, and I love hearing someone from outside of student government opinions on the different things that we're involved in. Just a few, I just want to clarify a few points. When you said we don't need to necessarily focus as much on the state and national level, but need to work locally, I don't know if a lot of you all know this, but on Cincinnati's 5 most powerful people, Dr. Vitruba is in that list. We have a very, very good backing in this greater Cincinnati area and Northern Kentucky area. And I think that's great, and we need to continue to focus to make sure we keep that local feeling. But it's time to start branching out, especially with this D1 move, where we're going across the entire country. Also, just quickly hit on recess. Eric and I had a discussion about this earlier. We think that we have recess every day, and especially with the new plaza renovations and the Oval, seeing people out there playing Frisbee almost every day, or football on the Oval, with the new plaza, people sitting around, people hanging out in the student union when it's bad outside. I think NKU has made leaps and bounds in making it a much more fun place to relax and a much more fun place to just enjoy being.
All right, now we're actually going to start taking some questions from the audience. So if you would like to ask a question, I'm going to ask you guys to line up in that aisle, and then whoever wants to go first can go. Go ahead. Oh, thanks. My name is Sarah. I'm the commissioner of this election, so it's nice to finally meet you. I'm also North Fork's president. So my first question is going to be about getting the election again out there to students who don't know about it. The problem that I've had being president of North Fork is getting information out to students who don't want it. They don't care what's going on campus. They don't care about sporting events. They don't care about SGA elections. So how would you, if elected, change and get the voice out there, cater to people who are not looking your way?
Thank you. You're absolutely right, that it's absolute apathy is how I assess it. I mean, SGA really doesn't seem to have any effect on the students. It's good that a couple current candidates have a plan that they're handing off. That would be something that I was thinking about doing, was actually putting together an idea for at least a 5-year program that each administration could then work with on that, with a very consistent message. With that program, then they would be able to tell the students, this is the progress we've made, this is what we've done. It wouldn't just be a one-time year thing. I understand that you can only hold the office for 1 year, so that is limiting in its own way. So I think that a very consistent program that directly affects all of the students, that's taken on by each SGA each year, and build from those successes, I think is one. The other thing is I think that the SGA might want to look into gathering its own funding source. So having fundraisers where they're gathering in more money for the SGA, not just what's given to it by the university, but I think that over time, if they can accrue enough money, that they'll be able to actually wield much more authority and have a greater impact on the Student Government Association, because they'll be able to disperse funds that will be at their own command.
Do you guys want to address that question?
John, one of the things that you said was that SGA doesn't really have any effect on the students. Honestly, that's one of the misconceptions that Chanel and I want to erase on this campus. Things like the student union or the rec center renovations were actually started as SGA initiatives. We're out here working every day for students, whether we know it or not, and that's what we want to erase. We want to make sure that any student can come and listen to us. We know these guys are working hard for us. We know they're working for us every day, because we really are in reality.
I apologize. I meant the perception would be. I didn't mean that you were not working. I apologize for that.
Okay, because what I was going to say is there were a few suicides last semester, and if you look at the list of counselors that NKU had, we had 3, and then we lost 1, and then the university, because of an SGA initiative last semester, hired another counselor to put on staff. So we had 4, because the waiting list to go see a counselor for any issue that you had was, it kept getting incrementally bigger. It started at like 6, and it got to 16, then it got in the 40s, and before you know it, you had to wait 2 months to see a counselor, and that's unacceptable. And so SGA made a baby step, but a baby step in the right direction for something so large.
All right, we can take another question from the audience.
Hi guys, I'm John. John, nice to meet you. I'm in SGA right now. My question is, depending on what the turnout will be through this week's election, if we're gonna have a younger, I'm sure Senate next year, in what way would you motivate them to put out resolutions and more legislation to make sure that they make the things that your plans will be followed through the next year? So that's where I got.
How would I motivate the SGA?
Yes.
I was going to abolish it. No, I'm kidding. No, honestly, and I'll give you a good example for one SGA that I went to. There's working on a resolution about the smoking platform, and I think that that's a good resolution, but there was one person from the university who asked the question, if you know the direction the university is going in, why are you making such an effort to pass this resolution? I would like the student government, if I was elected, I would like the Student Government Association to come up and generate their own ideas. I don't want to be the one telling them what to do. But I would like to steer them towards things I think that would accomplish more, maybe even have just a looser, lighter tone to the whole aspect of it. But I would still like them to come up with their own initiatives. I do have definitely a plan that I would like to see implemented, but I want to see if it's something that the SGA itself is looking for.
I agree with John. I think it's important for people to have original ideas, but I also think it's important when you're running a campaign like this with platforms to have some sort of plan going into things. That way, things like new parking spaces in garages or SGA forums or dollar menus don't fall by the wayside this year. I think it's important to have those things laid out for them. Here's the things we're going to get done, which if you guys have other ideas, great. Because I think it's important when you're promising the student body something to follow through with. We're all about accountability.
So one of the biggest things that I want to touch on here is experience. We touched on it in our opening statement, and experience is essential here. From mentorships with the younger senators and the older senators and resolution writing to being a voice on the Board of Regents that is educated and well informed. It's not about the title. It's about servant leadership and what you can do for your students that you're serving. Our knowledge and our skill sets together will take NKU in the right direction. They will, because of experience, because of what we know, because of who we know, and because we know how to do things. Also, I want to touch on the dollar menu that was brought up. Last year, that was a platform that Dustin and I did put into our administration when we were running. We had talks about it, but I think when we look back on it, it was a very naive thing to think that we would be able to implement that very easily. Because of the fact of the matter is, if we were to look into implementing something like that, our meal plans would go up roughly 10%, and I don't think that that's a fair cost to incur on students.
Okay, you guys done with that one?
Well, I mean, on the same vein of the experience, I feel like there's this perception that Chanel and I are lacking in experience. When actually I personally have served on e-boards in multiple organizations. And I've also seen had formal leadership training at 2 national programs, as well as serving on committees and other various organizations as well. And I know Chanel's involved in a bunch of stuff we're involved in.
I mean, I already named a few of the organizations that I'm involved in. Basically, anything that there's going on campus, I want to be involved with. I'm not spreading myself too thin. I'm passionate about everything that I do. I really love NKU, and I know that's a cliche, and people, they act like they don't like it, but Sarah knows what I'm talking about. I'm the North Sports president. I serve on the e-board for North Sports, and it's just all these things that you just want to be a part of and make a difference. And I think that we don't lack experience at all. We're great leaders, and I think the first thing about being a leader is that you should know yourself and be passionate about what you want to do, and then take the initiative to go further and further. Keep pushing yourself.
I'm going to hit on that for just a second. Eric and I together, well, let me put it this way. Chuck and Chanel's SGA experience together is less than one of Eric and I. That's just like the experience equals one of us in SGA. And yes, I agree that leadership in other organizations is very important. Eric and I are both heavily involved in other organizations as well. But when it comes to student government, we are a governing body of this university, and it is very important that we have those relationships with those administrators, those staff, those people that you can only really get that really close relationship on a professional level through SGA. And I think, as I said, our double amount of experience in SGA is something that sets us apart.
All right, another question from the audience. Go ahead.
Oh, come on.
I know.
Come back to me. Someone else go first. Come on, man. Someone else go
Just to keep harping on the experience thing, I know you guys, I've talked to both of you all, about what you guys are doing and things like that. And while I tend to disagree that not having experience in other organizations doesn't translate well into SGA, I think that I want to know, like, do you think that last year you coming in and essentially their situation, because I know the two games you beat last year very well, and they had way more experience with you than Dustin. So I mean, you guys were obviously very successful. You guys obviously had good guidance coming from the administration. You guys have all talked highly about that. I mean, I think that what is your big deal with experience?
I would like to touch on what you said about lack of experience last year. I personally had the lack of experience last year. Dustin had just as much experience in SJ as the competition. I was the young one in that circumstance. But what I think is great about experience this year is that because I was inexperienced, I had that opportunity as vice president to grow as an individual and to know what it really takes to run an effective administration, how to talk to administrators, faculty, staff, everybody across the board. And the thing is, this year, Alan and I both have together 4 years of experience on SGA. This isn't going to be something where we're running in, we both served on SGA for 1 year and we have no idea where we're going to go with things. We have a plan, we have direction, and all these things that are in this plan are feasible for next year.
And I do want to hit real quick on the fact that I don't want you to think that I'm saying that leadership in other organizations does not translate into SGA. That's not what I'm trying to say at all. I'm saying that we all have leadership in a lot of organizations. That's why we get involved in campus. That's why we care so much about the student body. But what I did want to emphasize was that if you take that aside, we all have that leadership in those organizations. But what sets us apart is the fact that we've had that experience in the organization that we're running for.
I guess it's time for me to talk about zombies. Since we brought up experience. And I do have a point about the zombies, and that it is a joke in a way. It's also something that's very currently popular. But when it comes to experience, I'm definitely pro lack of experience, not just for myself, but I think that being involved in the system continues to perpetuate a system. If you want to see changes, if you want to see something done different, you cannot rely on the people who are part of that system to make changes. You have to have other people come in and make changes. So while I appreciate that the two candidates over there have done a great deal of work and such, just because they're experienced doesn't mean that they're going to be able to adapt or change. The budget shortfall, the cuts that are coming, are going to require they're going to require a lot of adaptation from the student government, from the student body, from the staff and everyone else. So I think being able to think in new and different ways will be much more important than just continuing on with the way everything's gone.
I'd like to just hit real fast on John's thing real fast. I do want to point out that if you ask, I think, almost anyone who is currently on Senate or the administration or the faculty, SGA this year has gone places SGA has never gone before. They have made a name for themselves on this campus. Yes, it needs to continue to grow, but when you say perpetuates what you are, I think if you would ask people who have seen SGA grow over the last few years, they would all agree that what happened last year and the trajectory that we are now on has changed SGA on this campus forever and set it apart from what it was a few years ago. So I think, yes, there is a point where we have to adapt, and that's something Eric and I will make sure we do, but we also have made it a serious organization that has brought up serious issues and got results.
In that same vein, I feel like what you guys are saying is that the only way to require the necessary skill set to be SGA president and vice president is to have a ton of experience in SGA. I mean, Dustin wasn't the vice president of student government when he was elected. He's done a stellar job this year. So, I mean, is that what you're trying to say?
He also held an executive board position in student government for a year before he was a committee chair, then he became an officer, and then he became the student body president. So yes, he did have experience in it. It wasn't just as if he was he just kind of walked in half a semester and ran for a position.
I guess the point I'm trying to make is there are many ways outside of SGA to make good relationships with faculty, you know, to acquire the skill set. You know, it's not the be-all, end-all of requiring the skill set to be president. And I feel like that's extremely limiting, not only to us, but to what we can do for the student body if you don't have a diverse set of leadership skills coming from different places and diverse connections with people. Because you are representing the entire student body, not just the people that are in SGA, people that you know.
Okay, go ahead.
All five of you have touched on like the budget cuts or advocacy at some point, and I know it is. Hi, I'm Joseph. I know all of you touched on advocacy and the budget cuts and everything, and I know it's a big part of Eric and Alan's campaign platform, if I'm not mistaken. And I just wanted to know a specific, tangible goal that you could do when it comes to advocacy with all five of you. Thank you.
One of the biggest things that's actually happened this year is happening on student government right now, and it's called Norse Nights. And that is a form of advocacy in and of itself. It's reaching out to local businesses to help establish a Norse identity where students can go to these restaurants, show their all card to them, and receive a discount for it. That's a form of advocacy in and of itself, and that is a tangible goal and mission that has continued to happen and has all perpetuated this year. And then you can bet that it's going to be moving forward next year too.
And I mean, it's hard. I mean, I know you work for the Vice President of Community and Public Relations, but the thing is, I mean, and I think you would agree that we want to reinforce the things that have already been come up. The budget cuts is going to, I mean, theoretically could happen again in the coming years, and it probably will, unfortunately. But it's advocating for those things as they become necessary, working with this Health Innovation Center, trying to get that through. But to actually pinpoint it on one thing you're gonna that's gonna happen. I mean, I can't tell you next year we're gonna have a Health Innovation Center. I mean, we will work to make sure that we do everything we can to assure that NKU gets that and has representation, but we can't assure that it's gonna be good.
Honestly, a tangible goal for us is to have, you know, a larger rally than ever before, like we had this year, or a larger group of students calling their legislators, because I think it's more important that we have a group of people united, like uniting the university, more so than having one person at the top advocating for us. Because at the end of the day, you're just the student body president, you're just one person. It's like when your boss, Joe Wynn, says, at the end of the day, I'm just Joe Wynn. You know, I'm one person. It's important to get everybody involved.
Do you mind if I touch on that? Sure. The reason our rally was so successful this year was because we had a cohesive unit on eBoard that did all of the parts that they said they were going to follow through on. I got the names of the people, I put them in the computer, Chuck made the calls, got the shirts, all that stuff. We all worked together to make a great rally. But in my mind, I don't think you can make a platform out of the Rally for Higher Education, because any good student body president knows that the rally happens every year and that you always want to make it bigger and better than before. And if we're elected, we don't plan on letting it fall by the wayside either. We do plan on having a better rally than ever before.
Okay. John, you want to go ahead?
Whether or not I get elected, the governor's going to call from me whether he takes it. I think that if I was the Student Government Association president, it might give me the better ability for me to talk directly to him. But that's just how I do things. I agree that more students need to be put together, their voices need to be heard. A rally, I can see the benefit of a rally. I would definitely have more of an email bombardment campaign. I would definitely try to get as many students as I could to directly sign email petition, send it to the governor, follow it up with phone calls. We're fortunate in one way, I think, in Kentucky, in that it's a smaller state, so the voice, it's not easy to drown out the voices of many in this state. And I think that if we had the student bodies, I guess, anger, or lack the sense of betrayal over the budget more directed at those people who've been elected to run this state, I think that would possibly make changes happen easier.
Okay, we'll take one more question from the audience. Is there anybody?
I'll go.
Okay.
I know that we're going to go through a budget across the board budget cut to everything within the university. And already last year we had a $50,000 budget for SGA.
largely because of a carryover from the year before. What is each of these slates, besides you, Todd, as an individual, what is our plan? What are we gonna, what areas of our goals are gonna take hits because we have less money to spend?
Well, my program, I'm involved with the arts program, and that's usually the first one from the sinking ship. It's always the arts program. It's like, we don't need the arts program, it's just it's not even beneficial, is generally how it's viewed. I was lucky enough last year to listen to a lecture and then a question and answer forum by the director of the NEA. He came here to Cincinnati Arts Way. And one of the things that he pointed out is that as we move away from manufacturing jobs, we're getting into more creative jobs, different types of jobs. I don't think that the arts program should be the one that suffers first, but I think that if the university can find a way to, honestly, I'm not quite sure what the university is going to do with the cuts that they're going to get, you said across the board.
Well, just to focus you a little bit more, I'm asking what areas of your SGA and the platform that you're gonna serve as Senate Chair, what's gonna take a hit when you don't have $50,000, you have not your full $37,000 or $38,000, but you have 6% cut to that, you have $32,000. Where does SGA lose? Where do the students lose out on stuff that student government can do for them?
Well, they're going to lose out on advocacy. That's to begin with. But I think that looking at the cut that's going to go to SGA, then that's the time to become creative. That's the time to look at alternative sources of funding. And I've talked to quite a few, those people that I could, who are teachers, professors here, and everybody seems to just have a sense of resignation about it. That this is just going to happen and it's all going to be terrible. Well, whenever I have a setback in my life, I never look at, this is all just going to be terrible. I just have to go on. I try to find a way to overcome it and to get around it. I think that the SGA needs to do the same thing. I think that the chair of the SGA would then have to set the tone of, okay, here's the setback. What are we going to do to get around it?
I think it's pretty simple from our perspective. It's, it's a budget, you have this much money to spend and here are your expenses. And what we have to do is, I agree with John, alternate funding is very important. It's like we needed an extra bus for the rally. Justin called me, he's like, we need another bus. We got the money for it, let's do it. I mean, it's not always gonna come from SGA, but I don't think most of the things that we do are really that expensive. What's really gonna hurt the most is the budget cuts that come to the university that affect the students directly.
All right, I'll handle this, and this kind of comes back to the experience thing that we've been talking about all day. My job manages SGA's budget right now as Secretary of Administration. I manage SGA's budget. And again, on the experience, neither candidate knows this other than our platform right now, but next year the Student Fee Allocation Board will not be taking any hits in the size that it is allocating to student organizations. So we can expect, granted, we still have to present to these organizations and they will decide what each organization is worth that they can hand out to those organizations. But we know how that works. We know that right now they're not taking a cut because NKU prides itself on making sure that student organizations are funded and that students come first. They're finding other places. So next year, our Student Fee Allocation Board, the amount of money that it's allocating to students will be the same. So in my opinion, I think we will probably see a budget right around where we are this year.
Can I focus in on that just for a second?
Sure.
You guys have reiterated several times, not calling anyone out on anything, but the value of a cohesive unit in accomplishing goals. How are we going to promote a cohesive unit, not just within presidential and vice presidential candidates, when not everyone, as a senator myself, I'm finance committee chair, these two are on the board. You haven't divulged that information to us. How are we supposed to be a cohesive unit in functioning?
Here would be my
30 senators.
Here would be my explanation for that. My job title is to manage SGA's budget. That is one of the lines in my job title as Secretary of Administration. So that is something I have presented budgets to the Senate. They've seen what we have. That's something that my job is to also go and present to the Student Fee Allocation Board. So that's something I'm aware of, the amount of money that they have. No one has asked about it until now, and that's something I have no problem explaining to people why it is like that. But I'm just saying, it goes back to the thing. I've seen how that works. I know that next year, just simply answering the question, that I know we will have that money for next year.
Do either of you guys want to respond to that at all? Alright, we're running a little bit short on time, so we're gonna take this, final 10 minutes or so for you guys to give your closing statements. So, Chuck and Chanel, do you guys wanna go ahead?
Yeah, sure. First of all, we really appreciate everybody showing up. We had a great turnout today. Thanks for coming out to see us. What we really want to impress on you is that Chanel and I are not here for us. We're here for you guys. If you decide to elect us, great. If not, it's no skin off our backs because we're not here for ourselves. We really appreciate your vote. We really appreciate you want to do great things for you. Like I said, we're here to do things for the university. We really want to get the campus involved outside of the community, or the community, involved with NKU, because I feel like everything we do is so much bigger and so much better if the community got into everything the school did, like it should be. If you guys have any questions or anything like that, we will be always around. We're always around. And just want to get into
I mean, basically, he's already kind of touched on it. I'd like to hit on the fact that it wasn't that Chuck chose me, that's why I decided to do it. We have like a yin and yang kind of relationship. Chuck kind of talks out of line sometimes. I gotta have his back, tell him he's wrong, like this little quote the Northerner said. But you know what, it's just like, it's a good relationship. I think it's really great for the president and vice president. I think that we can make some great changes at NKU. It's really all about you guys. I'm really passionate about this campus. I'm really passionate about this community. I'm really passionate about you guys. I'm so thankful that all these people actually showed up. Thank you guys to the Northerners so much for having us. So.
Thank you.
Eric, now?
I'm an NKU student. Alan's an NKU student. You're an NKU student. We're experienced in SGA, and we're passionate about NKU and the students that we're representing. But this plan that we have, this plan is not a concrete concept. It's an expression of our commitments to the student body if we're elected. Our first priority is going to be listening to you all. Obviously, we're only here because you all elect us, so your concerns that come to us are what we follow through on. The student government in its mission statement says this: as the Student Government Association of Northern Kentucky University, we strive to fulfill our sworn duties to serve the student body by addressing its concerns, needs, and rights. While leading on a positive platform that is open, ethical, and supportive, we place the student body's well-being above all. If elected, we'll take the student body together, and we will take NKU in the right direction. And that direction is forward. Thank you for having us.
And John, you want to finish this off?
I would like to thank the Northerner for running an excellent debate. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone else for showing up. Really simple, if you want to have one of the most interesting and entertaining student government years, then definitely vote for me. I will not take it lightly, so that's it.